Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. Stick with us for all the top stories from India and the region as well as the US. I'm Gautam Roy. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Hello Ollie, how's it going there? It seems like Keir Starmer is in the thick of things today, isn't he?
Hello Gautam, we're certainly across that. Yes, it's 12:30 p.m. here in London, 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe, and coming up in the next half hour, Trump to address the Republican convention, Starmer addresses the European political community, and can AI address the problem of space junk? First, the headlines.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosts nearly 50 European leaders in a key meeting to discuss Ukraine and illegal migration, among other issues. EU lawmakers are voting in France's Strasbourg to pick its next European Commissioner. Incumbent Ursula von der Leyen makes a strong pitch for her re-election. US President Joe Biden tests COVID positive, concedes for the first time that he could drop out from the race if any major health issues emerge. And Donald Trump is scheduled to make his much-awaited acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention tonight in Milwaukee after surviving a sniper's bullet last weekend. US President Joe Biden returned to US state Delaware after testing positive for COVID-19 and cancelling a campaign event in Las Vegas on Wednesday. The 81-year-old is self-isolating after experiencing mild symptoms. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said Biden would not be able to speak at a scheduled event in Las Vegas due to the diagnosis. The president's diagnosis comes amid intense scrutiny of his health and stamina after his fellow Democrats wanted him to drop out of his re-election campaign. Meanwhile, Joe Biden also said he would end his presidential campaign if it emerged that he had a medical condition. Biden, who is under fire from fellow Democrats to drop his re-election campaign, tested positive for COVID-19, like I just said, while on a trip to Las Vegas on Wednesday, and is self-isolating after experiencing mild symptoms.
If I had some medical condition that emerged, if the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem. But I made a serious mistake in the whole debate.
And JD Vance, the millennial face of the MAGA movement, has vowed to return Donald Trump to the White House in his first speech since being tapped as the former president's 2024 running mate. In his primetime address received by a rapturous crowd in Milwaukee by Trump supporters, ex-Marine and self-proclaimed hillbilly Vance promoted an America First agenda, railed against illegal immigration, and made a major pitch to blue-collar voters. DD India's Benji Hai reports.
This was a big chance for JD Vance to introduce himself to the American public and define who he is to the world. And he took that chance. Describing himself as a working-class boy, he pledged to commit to the working man, to stand up for American citizens, touting an isolationist, patriotic set of policies which he believes will help left-behind voters achieve the American dream and ultimately allow him to serve alongside Trump in the building behind me.
So tonight, Mr. Chairman, I stand here humbled, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to say I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America. President Trump's vision is so simple and yet so powerful. We're done, ladies and gentlemen, catering to Wall Street. We'll commit to the working man.
He was introduced by his wife, Usha Vance, the daughter of Indian immigrants. She acknowledged their different backgrounds.
And his goals in this new role are the same that he has pursued for our family: to keep people safe, to create opportunities, to build a better life, and to solve problems with an open mind.
In fact, this was quite the family affair on the penultimate day of the convention. Donald Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., spoke before JD Vance and was joined by his daughter Kai. On Thursday, Donald Trump Sr., that is, will take to the stage himself, his first public comments since his attempted assassination. JD Vance did make reference to that attempted assassination, but he did not apologise for pinning the shooting on Joe Biden and his campaign's rhetoric. This has been a fractious, volatile campaign. Vance tonight showed he's willing to bring the fight, but also paint himself as someone who can empathise with the country at large. In Washington, Benji Haya reporting for DD India.
Earlier, U.S. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump made a triumphant entrance at the convention. Trump arrived in Milwaukee moments before JD Vance delivered a speech. He's set to formally accept the party's nomination in a primetime speech on Friday morning, according to Indian Standard Time. He will face Democratic President Joe Biden in the 5th of November U.S. presidential election. And all the top European leaders are being hosted by newly minted UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Woodstock today. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London and gets us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, is this the biggest European summit taking place in the UK since Brexit?
It's the biggest in a generation, Gautam. That's how the UK government is describing it anyway. British Prime Minister, as you say, Keir Starmer, hosting the European political community comprising over 40 nations at Blenheim Palace in Woodstock in Oxfordshire to the north of London to enhance cooperation on border security but also other issues as well. During the meeting, Keir Starmer has been advocating for a strengthened relationship between Britain and the European Union and standing firm in his support for Ukraine.
The task is urgent because our security is on the line. Every day Ukraine fights to protect not just the Ukrainian people, but the European people, a continent where our belief in freedom, democracy and the rule of law was hard won and that wants to live in peace. Have no doubt we will stand with you for as long as it takes.
Now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is also at the meeting, and he says a united Europe is crucial.
We have maintained unity in Europe and are acting together, which means that Putin has missed his primary target. He has failed to create division in Europe. The more decisive Europe is in preserving this unity, the long-lasting peace we will ensure. Putin cannot sustain relationships with truly strong leaders. And this is our advantage. But it remains an advantage only as long as we are united.
Now, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban is also at the European Political Community Summit, and he insists the solution to the conflict in Ukraine lies in negotiations.
They believe that they can destroy militarily the Russians, which I don't think so, because I think that there is no solution of this conflict on the battlefield. We will lose every day thousands of innocent people, you know. We have to stop it. That's at a neighboring country. This is my opinion. Solution is not on the battlefield. Solution is on the negotiation table.
Now, DD India's Stuart Smith joins us live for more on this. And Stuart, this reset the UK is calling for in European relations, what might it actually look like?
Well, Downing Street says that illegal immigration and border security is at the heart of this reset, with Keir Starmer saying he wants to make it clear to the other European leaders attending this summit that small boat arrivals were a massive priority for his premiership. He says that the criminal smuggling gangs that make millions out of those small boat crossings from France and Belgium to the UK are something that he would like to tackle at source, which is why he needs the help of other European leaders. The UK is going to try to make changes with the Home Office, the department responsible for immigration, by diverting staff that were on the Rwanda asylum scheme, the plan by the Conservative government to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing. Those staff diverted to work on a rapid returns scheme to get these migrants back to the continent, but it also requires European leaders to help. So what he'll be looking for at this agreement, as well as building trust with his new colleagues, will be on an EU-wide returns agreement, trying to get support for that, a deal that will allow the UK to send migrants back to the European Union where they've travelled from, and also potentially trying to tap into the EU's fingerprinting system for asylum seekers, which would allow the intelligence authorities here in the UK to use the intelligence that their European partners have gathered.
And Stuart, just quickly, what do we expect in terms of agreements on support for Ukraine?
One of the key issues of this summit, how to deal with the threat of Russia that's perceived by the UK and other European leaders, while also helping Ukraine. Keir Starmer said earlier the threat from Russia reaches right across Europe. He'll be looking to put out feelers, no specific agreement yet, more generally with the EU on a defence and security pact, something that is a key foreign policy priority for Starmer, and also look at other ways to increase European defence.
Thank you, Stuart. Now, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says the alliance's new command for coordinating military aid and training for Ukraine's military will be operational in September. NATO leaders agreed at a summit earlier this month to launch the effort.
The time to stand for freedom and democracy is now, and the place is Ukraine. And NATO allies are stepping up our support to Ukraine. We have agreed to establish a command to coordinate and provide security assistance and training for Ukraine. And I'm glad that today I can announce that the command will be operational in September.
UK lawmakers are continuing to debate the government's plans for the country. Britain's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that his King's Speech takes the brakes off our economy. That was during a debate with the former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in Parliament on Wednesday. He also promised national renewal. In a ceremony to mark the state opening of the new Parliament, King Charles read out the laws which the government wants the House of Commons to pass. EU lawmakers are casting votes on Thursday for European Commission President as Ursula von der Leyen awaits her fate on whether she will stay on for another term. At least 361 members of the European Parliament out of 720 would have to vote in her favour to secure her second term as European Commission President. The three centrist groups expected to support her have a total of 401 lawmakers, but some are expected to oppose her in the secret ballot. If von der Leyen fails, EU country leaders will have a month to suggest another candidate. Ahead of the vote, Ursula von der Leyen vowed to create a European defence union and to stay the course on Europe's green transition. Addressing the European Parliament, von der Leyen laid out a programme focused on prosperity and security and promised a raft of climate policies, including a legally binding EU target to cut emissions by 90% by 2040. And she promised continued support for Ukraine.
That delivers prosperity, that protects people, and that defends democracy. A stronger Europe that delivers social fairness and supports people. A stronger Europe that implements what it agrees in a fair way, and that sticks to the targets of the European Green Deal with pragmatism, technology neutrality, and innovation.
DD India's Alex Kadier joins me now live from Brussels for more on this. And Alex, do we expect her to win?
In a word, Ollie, we do at this point. The voting has just closed in the last couple of minutes, and we're going to wait about an hour to get the results. What we have heard in the last half an hour or so is that the Greens will be supporting Ursula von der Leyen. That means she's got her coalition of the European People's Party, her party, the Socialists and Democrats, as well as Renew. And that centrist coalition plus the Greens basically means she's almost certainly over the line. You said it, 361 MEPs. With these groups together, she is well over 400 MEPs and therefore will secure quite a big vote of support from that European Parliament, particularly as we still don't know what the European Conservatives and Reformists, those right-wing parties, including Giorgia Meloni's party, will do. So that could be an even higher number. So in a word, yes, it seems very, very likely now at this point that Ursula von der Leyen will be confirmed as the President of the European Commission for another 5 years. That speech just a few hours ago seen as crucial in convincing those who were worried that she might backtrack on her green commitments, on the green industrial strategy, on those targets you just mentioned as well. Clearly she reassured enough people because the Greens are now supporting her. The big question now will be by how much she will get that support, and certainly how she will then deal in the next 5 years with all the promises she made to all these different parties. The only things clearly she wasn't going to compromise on in her speech was Ukraine. She rebuked Viktor Orban very clearly for his trip to Moscow, saying that he speaks of peace, but actually his trip was all about appeasement of the Russian invaders of Ukraine. That is a clear red line. For everything else, we'll see in the next 5 years on what and how she's willing to compromise with the rest of Parliament. Ollie.
Thank you, Alex. Now, a US startup, Privateer, is hoping to help solve the issue of space junk with an artificial intelligence-driven tracking system that warns satellite operators before a collision that could create even more debris. The startup aims to make its tracking data available to satellite operators, including space agencies and scientific communities around the world.
Space junk is becoming a growing issue as more satellites are put into orbit. But US startup Privateer Space is hoping to help solve the problem with an AI-driven system that tracks, records and monitors the enormous volume of space junk. The startup says it can warn satellite operators before a collision, which could create even more debris.
I think this becomes critical and increasingly more critical as we put more and more assets into space.
Privateer's platform, called Wayfinder, uses data from various sources and satellite operators, including the US Space Command. It is already tracking more than 35,000 objects in orbit. Declan Lynch is Chief Revenue Officer at Privateer.
To be able to track that many objects and be able to plan and predict where their orbits will be over the next 24, 48, and 72 hours requires a lot of data and a lot of computational power. And we're able to leverage the power of AI to do that in a fraction of the time that it previously took humans to do.
Space junk is mainly composed of defunct satellites, spent rocket stages, and fragments from disintegration and collision events. The debris can orbit Earth at speeds of 17,000 miles per hour. And this can pose a significant threat to the International Space Station and operational satellites, many of which are crucial to modern systems on Earth, like communications.
As we put more objects into space, we're going to be crowding our orbital highways. And we very much believe that our stewardship of space, or of Earth, doesn't just end at our atmosphere, right? It extends into all the stuff that we're putting into space ourselves.
Privateer aims to make its artificial intelligence tracking data available to satellite operators, international space agencies, and scientific communities around the world.
Space domain awareness is still, something that many governments are trying to understand. And operators that are putting satellites into orbit at various scales definitely need this capability themselves.
Fascinating story. Gautam, back to you.
Thank you, Ollie, for joining us from London. And still to come on DD India Global. Even after a nationwide shutdown, violent clashes still rock Bangladesh, with another person killed in clashes. Made in India helmets spotted protecting the heads of Armenian troops participating in the Eagle Partner 2024 military exercise.
As the world gears up for the biggest sporting extravaganza, Olympics 2024, we at DD India are all set to bring you reports, reactions and all the latest action from Ground Zero. Watch DD India's super exclusive show, Cheer for Bharat. Only on DD India from July the 22nd at 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT. Get ready to cheer for Indian athletes at the Paris Olympics 2024.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, Indian Navy's mission deployed warship INS Teg rendered search and rescue assistance for the capsized oil tanker MV Prestige Falcon, and it has rescued 9 personnel, including 8 Indians. The ship had capsized about 25 nautical miles southeast of Ras Madraka, Oman on Monday, and search and rescue efforts in coordination with Oman authorities are in progress since the next day. The ship is reported to have had a total of 16 crew members, including 13 Indians and 3 Sri Lankans. The search and rescue efforts by Indian and Omani assets is being undertaken in challenging weather conditions as the area is experiencing rough sea and strong winds. The Indian Navy's long-range maritime reconnaissance aircraft P-8I is also assisting in the search for survivors. In a fierce encounter with terrorists in the Kastigarh area of Doda in Jammu and Kashmir, 2 Indian Army soldiers have sustained injuries. Given the severity of these injuries, these soldiers have been airlifted to the Army Hospital for advanced medical care. The operation against the terrorists is ongoing as security forces continue to engage with the hostile elements in the region. And police have launched a major crackdown on overground workers network and arrested 4 of them responsible for providing logistic support to the terrorists in Doda district. As India is fast emerging as a major defense supplier in the world, Armenian forces participating in the Eagle Partner 2024 military exercise have been spotted wearing an India-made helmet-mounted thermal imaging monocular. The Armenian troops were spotted in the thermal imaging devices developed by Tonbo Imaging, a Bangalore-based Indian defense manufacturer and a startup. It's a multi-mission uncooled thermal imaging sight designed and optimized for small and medium caliber weapons as a true clip-on. It also serves as a standalone sight, handheld viewer or helmet-mounted system. These sights are among the several defense-related equipments that Armenia has bought from India to beef up its military. India is also a major defense supplier for Armenia. In Bangladesh, at least 4 people have been killed and hundreds injured in clashes between quota reform protesters and the police on Thursday during a nationwide shutdown. The protesters on Wednesday called for a complete shutdown across the country to push home their demand to reform the quota system and protest the attacks on student protesters. In view of the ongoing situation in Bangladesh, the Indian High Commission in Dhaka issued an advisory for the Indian community members and the Indian students residing in Bangladesh to avoid local travel and minimize their movement outside their living premises. Let's now take a look at some of the other updates coming in from around the world as well. 7 people have been reported dead in a building fire in France on Thursday. The victims include 3 children and 1 adolescent. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. London-born Scottish actor Newty Gatwa was amazed to see his wax statue at Madame Tussauds in London. The actor plays new Doctor Who in the much-loved BBC cult series. The statue will be open for the public on the 19th of this month. 22-year-old Sudanese native Asabar Mustafa works at a car repair shop, breaking the gender stereotype. Mustafa fled Sudan after the war broke out and took refuge in Libya. In a major breakthrough, scientists at the University of Tokyo have developed a method to attach living skin tissue to robotic faces and make them smile. This is expected to be of great use in the field of cosmetics and medicine. So there you see more developments taking place in robotics, which could mimic human actions in the coming days. This is all very futuristic, exciting developments taking place in the scientific, especially robotics world.
このつなぎみたいなもので、これが固まってたらこのような年が
With that, that's all we have in this edition of DD India Global, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code that's right there on the screen and download it quite right away. Now, we'll be back with more news and updates as a break here in DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Global.